Welcome to another episode of the Part 145 EASA training series from Phoenix Way Academy. Hello, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Sam.
Well, in this deep dive, we're going to cover the topic of 145.A.35 certifying staff and support staff. This section is absolutely crucial for anyone involved in aircraft maintenance. It lays out the fundamental requirements for the people who literally sign off on the safety of an aircraft.
That's right. It's really not just about having a license, is it? It's about making sure the individuals performing and certifying maintenance are genuinely competent and, well, current. Today, we'll embark on a deep dive, peeling back the layers on all the requirements of 145.A.35. Everything from ensuring that adequate understanding right through to the critical process of actually issuing the certification authorizations.
Okay, let's unpack this absolutely vital regulation. So we're starting with clause 145.A.35A. This really sets the baseline, doesn't it, for competence beyond just holding a license.
Exactly, yeah.
It's about a deep practical understanding.
Precisely. This clause, 145.A.35A, it essentially mandates that the organization itself has to ensure its certifying staff and support staff have, well, an adequate understanding. And that's not just of the relevant aircraft or components, but really crucially of their own specific organizational procedures.
Right.
And this has to be done before issuing or reissuing any certification authorization, especially for the certifying staff.
And just to make sure we're clear on the terms here, maybe we should quickly define those key ones, the way the regulation itself does.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So first up, support staff. That means those people holding an aircraft maintenance license under Annex 3, which is Part 66 in Category B1, B2, B2L, B3, and/or L. They need the appropriate aircraft ratings, of course, and they're typically working in a base maintenance environment, even if they don't necessarily hold certification privileges themselves.
Yeah.
Then you've got relevant aircraft and/or components. That just means the specific aircraft or components listed in that particular certification authorization. Pretty straightforward. And finally, certification authorization. Now, that's the formal document the organization issues. It basically says that staff member can sign certificates of release to service, but only within the limitations stated on it, and they do that on behalf of the approved organization.
What's really insightful here, I think, is that EASA isn't just, ticking a box with a license. They're setting up this fundamental safeguard. It's about the engineer's practical, real-world grasp of a specific aircraft and a particular organization's unique ways of doing things. That has to be checked before they sign anything off.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate firewall, isn't it? Against just having general knowledge, but maybe missing a specific crucial detail.
Exactly.
And this idea is backed up by the Acceptable Means of Compliance, the AMC, for 145.A.35A. It really hammers home that just holding a Part 66 license, even with the right type rating, doesn't automatically mean you're good to go for authorization. The organization always has that responsibility to thoroughly check competency for the actual scope of maintenance that they'll be signing off.
Which, when you think about it, makes total sense. A license is broad, right? But only the organization can really verify if someone's competent for their specific operations on their specific planes.
Yeah.
The AMC then digs into what adequate understanding actually means, doesn't it? It goes beyond just theory.
Yeah.
It means the person needs proper training and assessment on the specific aircraft type, the component, and critically, any differences, like in the model or variant or configuration.
Right, so it's not enough to generally know, say, a Boeing 737. You need to understand the specifics of this particular 737 model the organization operates, maybe its unique configuration. And it also includes making sure their knowledge, their skills, their experience are genuinely relevant to that specific product type and configuration. Taking into account any differences from the standard type rating training. It also covers attitude towards safety, sticking to procedures, and knowing the specific organizational and operator procedures, things like handling components correctly using the MEL, the minimum equipment list, tech log procedures, how to do independent checks properly.
Okay.
The AMC even mentions that some special tasks, like, say, really in-depth troubleshooting, might need extra specific training and experience on top.
So let's try a real-life example then. Imagine an engineer, they've got a generic Airbus A320 Part 66 rating. Clause A here means they also need to understand the specifics of, say, this particular airline's A320 fleet. Maybe it's got a unique cabin layout or a specific engine mod, whatever it is. And they need to know this maintenance organization's exact paperwork trails and safety protocols, all before they get authorized to certify work.
Exactly. It's all about competency and knowledge that is specific to the job and the organization, not just holding a broad license. That's the foundation.
Okay, so we've established that knowing your specific aircraft and the organization's procedures is non-negotiable. But how does all that practical understanding connect with the formal qualifications? That leads us nicely into Clause 145.A.35B, which is about how these authorizations line up with the Part 66 license.
Right. And this clause makes it really crystal clear. It says, and I'll paraphrase slightly here, except for a couple of specific cases listed elsewhere. Those are 145.A.30J and 66.A.20A3. The organization can only issue a certification authorization that matches the basic categories or subcategories on the person's Part 66 license.
Mm-hmm.
And except for the Category A license, it also has to match any type ratings listed on that license.
Mm-hmm.
Crucially, the license itself has to stay valid the whole time the authorization is valid, and the person has to keep complying with Part 66 rules.
What's fascinating there is the really tight link it creates. So if your Part 66 license is for, say, a Category B 1.1 with a Boeing 737 rating,
Yep.
then your certification authorization from the company has to mirror that exactly. You just can't be authorized for avionics tasks. That'd be D2 usually, or maybe sign off on an Airbus A320 if it's not on your license.
Exactly. Your formal license basically sets the absolute ceiling for your certification privileges. No ifs, no buts.
It makes for a really robust system, doesn't it? Where the formal qualifications aren't just, respected, they are the bedrock.
Yeah, individuals have to operate strictly within their certified expertise. It prevents people from sort of straying into areas they aren't formally qualified for, which directly boosts safety by keeping those boundaries clear.
Okay, so beyond that initial knowledge and the formal license alignment, there's this really crucial requirement for ongoing practical experience because, let's face it, even the best training can get a bit rusty without hands-on work.
You're absolutely right.
And that's where Clause 145.A.35C comes into play.
Yes, Clause C. This one states that the organization shall ensure that all certifying staff and support staff are involved in at least 6 months of actual relevant aircraft or component maintenance experience in any consecutive 2-year period.
Hmm.
And the regulation actually defines what involved in actual relevant maintenance means. It's either exercising the privileges of their certification authorization or actually carrying out maintenance on at least some of the aircraft types or systems specified in their authorization.
This is a really important one, I think, because it tackles skill fade head on. You could have an engineer, maybe they move to a planning role for a year or so.
Right, a desk job.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe someone who only worked on, say, landing gear for a long time. This clause forces them to demonstrate they've been physically involved in relevant maintenance, covering the scope of their authorization for at least 6 months within any 2-year window.
It stops skills getting outdated and ensures they're current with, real-world practices and challenges you only see out on the floor.
It's not just about being present then, is it? It's about active engagement.
Precisely. Mandating regular hands-on experience keeps staff sharp, keeps them proficient, which is, well, absolutely paramount for aviation safety. It's a dynamic requirement for a pretty dynamic field.
Okay, so building on that practical experience, what about the formal learning side? Because technology moves so fast in aviation.
Good point.
That brings us to clauses 145.A.35 D and E, which are all about recurrent training.
Right. Clause D tells us the organization shall ensure that all certifying staff and support staff receive sufficient recurrent training in each 2-year period to ensure that they have up-to-date knowledge of relevant technologies, organization procedures, and safety management, including human factor issues.
So continuous learning is basically mandatory?
Yep. It goes beyond just the hands-on stuff to actual formal training. Keeps people updated on new tech, any changes in company procedures, and those critical safety elements like human factors.
Yeah.
Understanding how human limitations and errors can affect safety outcomes.
And a real-life example of that could be maybe training on some new diagnostic software for a specific system.
Yeah, definitely. Or maybe a workshop on updated company safety protocols, or even a specific refresher course on human factors to help prevent common maintenance mistakes. It's all about staying current.
Okay, so that's the what. What about clause?
Right, Clause E takes that requirement from D and puts the structure around it. It says the organization shall establish a program for recurrent training, including a procedure to ensure compliance. at a procedure to ensure compliance with Annex 3, Part 66.
Ah, so it's not enough just to do the training. They need a proper system for it.
Exactly. No ad hoc stuff. They need a defined, structured, recurrent training plan. It needs schedules, defined content, procedures to check everyone actually completes the required training on time.
Right.
And that the training itself meets both the 145.A.35 standards and the relevant Part 66 standards. It needs to be a formalized, auditable process. You need that accountability.
So these two clauses together, D and E, they really show that dual commitment, don't they? First, what training is needed, and second, crucially, how the organization makes sure it happens systematically.
That's a proactive approach,
Yeah.
designed to stop knowledge gaps from opening up.
Okay, so before any authorization actually gets granted or even renewed, there's one more crucial check, isn't there? Like a final gatekeeper.
There's indeed.
That's clause 145.A.35F.
Yes. And this clause, with one specific exception we'll touch on, requires that the organization shall assess all certifying staff for their competency, qualifications, and capability to carry out their intended certifying duties, in accordance with the procedure that has to be in their MOE, their Maintenance Organization Exposition, prior to issuing or reissuing a certification authorization.
So it's a real hands-on verification, not just shuffling paperwork.
Absolutely. They have to assess the person's overall competency, their qualifications, and their actual capability for the specific duties they'll be performing.
And that exception you mentioned?
Yes. The exception is for the cases in 145.A.30J5. That's typically for unforeseen circumstances. Think about an aircraft on ground, an AOG situation, where you might need a one-off authorization for someone not normally employed by the organization.
Okay, an emergency situation.
Exactly. But even then, it's not a free-for-all. The compliance monitoring personnel still have to verify the person's qualifications. It's a provision for emergencies, but it still has safeguards built in.
So sticking with the normal process, if an engineer is maybe applying for a new aircraft type rating on their authorization, they might have to go through a pretty comprehensive internal assessment, like interviews, maybe practical tests on the aircraft itself, or a review of their past work.
Precisely. Anything needed to ensure they genuinely have the capability to perform those specific certifying duties. It's a really critical safety net. Is the organization taking that final responsibility to confirm the person isn't just qualified on paper, but they're demonstrably capable of doing the job safely?
Okay, so once all these, frankly, quite rigorous requirements are met, you've got the understanding, the license alignment, the experience, the recurrent training, and that final comprehensive assessment. What happens next?
Well, that's where clause 145.A.35G comes in. It's about actually issuing the authorization.
The final step.
Sort of the final step for issuing, It states, when the conditions of points A, B, D, F, and where applicable, point C have been fulfilled, the organization shall issue a certification authorization that clearly specifies the scope and limits of such authorization. And here's a key part. Continued validity is dependent upon continued compliance with points A, B, D, and where applicable, C.
So it brings everything together. It means only when all those previous conditions are properly met can the organization actually issue the authorization document. And that document has to be really precise, detailing exactly what aircraft types, systems, or specific tasks the person is allowed to certify. But the crucial bit is that ongoing validity. So if somewhere down the line, that engineer maybe misses their recurrent training deadline, or they don't meet the 6 months experience requirement,
then that authorization could become invalid or even be formally revoked.
Exactly. It's a continuous responsibility, not just a one-time stamp of approval you get and then forget about.
It really underlines that competence isn't a one-time achievement, is it? It's an ongoing commitment. And that underpins the whole system of trust in aviation maintenance.
Okay, that sets the scene for the practicalities then, how these authorizations are actually managed day to day. So next up is clause 145.A.35AH. What's that about?
Clause H is all about clarity. It simply says, the authorization must be in a form that makes its scope clear to the certifying staff and to any authorized person who may require to examine the authorization.
So basically, the document itself needs to be unambiguous, easy to understand.
Exactly. No jargon that needs deciphering. The person holding it should know exactly what they can and can't do. And equally, if an auditor from, say, the competent authority or EASA itself looks at it, they should be able to understand the scope immediately.
Makes sense. Transparency and easy verification. Okay, what about clause 145. 145.35I. That's about who actually issues these things.
Right. Who holds the pen, so to speak. The clause specifies.
Mm.
Compliance monitoring personnel shall issue the certification authorization. However, it adds, such personnel may nominate other personnel to issue or revoke the certification authorization in accordance with the procedure in the MOE.
Ah, okay. So the ultimate responsibility lies with the compliance monitoring function, which makes sense given their role. But they can delegate the actual issuing or revoking as long as it's all properly documented in their procedures.
Precisely. It ensures there's a consistent and controlled process,
Mm.
managed by the people best placed to verify all the requirements have been met before granting those privileges.
And what about the actual staff member? Do they get a copy?
Yes, that's covered in Clause 145.A.35J. It mandates that certifying staff and support staff must be furnished with a copy of their certification authorization in either a documented or electronic format.
Pretty straightforward. Just ensures they have a formal record of their privileges.
Yep, whether it's physical card, a printout, or maybe a digital file they can access, it's crucial for their own reference and, well, for the next point.
Which is presenting it when asked. Clause K.
Exactly. Clause 145.8.35K requires that certifying staff and support staff must present their certification authorization to any authorized person within 24 hours.
Okay, so not necessarily carry it on them at all times, but be able to produce it reasonably quickly if an inspector or auditor asks.
That's the idea. Allows for verification during audits or inspections without necessarily interrupting work instantly, but ensures accountability.
Right. Now, a very fundamental point in Clause L. 145.8.35L.
Ah, yes, the age requirement. The minimum age for certifying staff and support staff is 21 years.
Simple rule, but it says quite a lot about the level of responsibility involved, doesn't it?
It does. This isn't a job for someone straight out of school.
Hmm.
It reflects the gravity of signing off on aircraft safety. It implies a certain level of maturity and judgment needed for such a safety-critical role.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's get into a couple of specifics for different license categories near the end here. Clause M 145.A.35M talks about Category A license holders.
Right. So for a Category A license holder, this clause states they can only exercise their specific privileges. Those are defined back in Part 66.A.20 after they've satisfactorily completed the relevant Part 145 approved task training. And that training needs to include both theoretical and practical elements. Plus, they have to demonstrate their competence either through an examination or via a workplace assessment carried out by the organization.
Okay, so even for the Category A license, it's not just about having the license itself. They need specific organization-approved training for the tasks they'll do.
The why and the how.
Exactly. And then they have to actively prove they can do it either in a test or assessed on the job. It's quite a granular level of verification for those specific, often quite limited tasks they perform.
Yeah, it makes sure that even for a more restricted license, the person is definitely proficient in the specific tasks they are authorized for. It reinforces that applied knowledge and proving capability are key across the board.
Right. And finally, for this particular deep dive anyway, we have Clause N. 145.A.35N. This one addresses Category B2 license holders who might want to exercise certain privileges usually associated with Cat A, specifically those mentioned in 66.A.20A3. Yes.
This one's a little more involved. It sets out two main conditions for a B2 holder to exercise those specific privileges. First, they have to have satisfactorily completed the relevant Category A task training just like the Cat A holder needed. But secondly, they also need at least 6 months of documented practical experience in the privileges being exercised.
Ah, so task training plus real experience.
Exactly. And that training, again, needs both theoretical and practical parts, and it has to be assessed via an exam or workplace assessment by the issuing organization. And critically, that's also where the practical experience should be obtained.
So for a B2 avionics specialist, for instance, to perform certain tasks, usually done by a Cat A mechanic, they need not only the specific task training for that mechanical task, but also half a year's worth of documented real-world experience doing it.
That's right. It's like a double layer of verification. It really emphasizes the practical application of that knowledge in the live maintenance environment before they can sign off on it.
Which is absolutely paramount for safety, isn't it?
Couldn't agree more. It ensures that when someone is stepping slightly outside their primary license scope, even for specific approved tasks, they are comprehensively trained. and have proven hands-on experience in that exact area. It's this careful management of privileges that forms a cornerstone of aviation safety.
Wow, that was a really comprehensive deep dive into
Uh,
145.A.35. It truly underlines the meticulousness required for certifying and support staff in aviation maintenance. The emphasis on continuous understanding, the experience, the recurrent training, and that rigorous assessment. It's clearly what genuinely underpins safety in the air.
Absolutely. What stands out to you, the listener, from this detailed look? I mean, how competency and authorization are managed. These clauses really do illustrate the layers upon layers of protection built into the system.
Indeed, we've certainly peeled back the layers of the regulation itself for 145.A.35 today. It's clear this standard is designed to ensure, well, constant competence, isn't it?
It is. And in the next deep dive, we'll cover the AMCs related to this section. They provide even more detail on how these regulations are actually implemented in practice.
Sounds good. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media under the name Phoenix Way Academy.
Thanks for listening. Stay safe and stay informed.